you guys been up to?
Not much, just working.
Same here, it's been a busy week. I have not seen him since college. So that's how long that's been. It's been like 15, 16 years.
Hello, I was wondering if you had any availability for next Tuesday.
So wait. You know, I've been thinking a lot about our next trip.
Dear partners, WeTech is a joint stock company specializing in manufacturing and supplying products and services for the aviation industry.
I think we should focus on the marketing strategy first.
I agree, but we also need to consider the budget.
I think I'll get the iced latte.
Oh, that sounds good. I was looking at that too.
I was like, oh, I feel like you would like this. It's like
The
a
evening
mystery,
began with the
but it's
illusion of
not
peace,
like a scary
the kind
mystery.
of golden calm that fools even the most
I've
cautious
always been
heart into
interested in
thinking the storm
technology
has passed.
and how it can be used
The
to
city
solve
outside was
real-world
winding
problems.
down, but in one modest home, the scent of dinner filled the air like a quiet promise. She had nearly collapsed earlier in the day, her body surrendering without warning to an exhaustion she didn't want to admit. His panic had been immediate, rushing to her side, calling her name, his voice trembling with fear. He rarely allowed anyone to hear. She had smiled weakly afterward, assuring him she'd take better care of herself. But deep inside she knew her health was a fragile thread, stretched too thin over too many unspoken burdens. They didn't talk about it again, though the worry lingered in his eyes long after. Later, as they sat with his mother at the dinner table, she found herself caught in a strange warmth she wasn't used to. His mother treated her not as an outsider, not as a guest to be politely tolerated, but as a daughter whose scars were to be guarded, not judged. The older woman spoke softly, urging her to let go of the past. Those years of abandonment, the cold truth that her parents had lived all along, yet had chosen not to claim her. It had taken years for her to stop hoping for their return, and even longer to accept that she didn't want it anymore. She had decided that some doors were better left sealed shut, no matter who was on the other side. Across the table, he watched her with the kind of attention that made her heart ache. Carefully, quietly, as if any sudden movement might break the fragile peace between them. In his hand was something small, hidden until he rose and stepped closer. When he placed it in her palm, she froze. It was the necklace she had lost weeks ago, the one she had assumed was gone forever. Swallowed by the chaos of her daily grind, her throat tightened. "Where did you—" He only smiled and told her it didn't matter, that some things belonged with their rightful owner. She didn't know it yet, but the necklace had been recovered through a chain of events far more complicated than he let on. A chase, a confrontation, a quiet victory won without her knowing. Meanwhile, shadows hung over his company. The recent months had been brutal. Competitors emerging like wolves, biting into his market share with aggressive pricing and tempting promises. His managers reported one issue after another. Ineffective ad campaigns draining their budget, recruitment falling flat as newer firms lured workers with benefits he couldn't match, storms delaying construction timelines, and a growing threat from rivals offering turnkey building solutions. Every meeting felt like a battle plan, every decision a gamble. He listened to proposals, move advertising to Facebook, focus on older demographics, tie bonuses to employee loyalty, use AI to keep designs fresh. But each solution came with its own risk. He decided, against the cautious murmurs of some advisors, to pour another $5 billion into the fight. It was a bold move, one that could save them or bury them. Alongside the funding came a new focus, sharpening their brand, investing in their people, reminding the market that his company's name was built not on quick wins, but on decades of trust. Through it all, she tried to stay in the background, though his mother had other plans. Over tea one evening, the older woman suggested she come work as her secretary, a role that would keep her close, yet give her purpose within the family's world. She hesitated, the old insecurities rising. She didn't have the education, the experience, the polish such a position demanded. She asked for time, promising to study, to be ready when the moment was right. Then there was the night they shared with his mother again. Dinner out, laughter masking the weight each of them carried. What she didn't see was the quiet gesture under the table when he signaled the waiter and paid the bill before anyone else could. To her, it was just a nice meal. To him, it was one more way of telling her she was safe here, that in his world, she wouldn't have to carry the kind of burdens that had defined her past. But beneath the warm light of those evenings, something darker was stirring, an awareness that their lives were changing, and that the choices ahead would not only test their loyalty, but also their ability to survive the storms gathering on both the personal and professional fronts. The days after that dinner unfolded with deceptive gentleness, the kind that could almost lull them into forgetting the weight they were carrying. Almost. The necklace rested against her collarbone like a promise she was afraid to trust, a reminder of how much he cared, and yet how much of his world she still didn't see. He noticed the way her fingers would find it absent-mindedly, twisting the chain when she was lost in thought. He didn't tell her about the confrontation that had led to its return, about the thief cornered in a cramped alley, or about the quiet conversation he'd had with the police officer who'd made it all happen. It was better this way, he told himself. Better that she see the world as stable for once, not as the chaos he often waded through to protect her. But stability was an illusion, and illusions have a way of shattering. At the company, the tension was beginning to hum beneath every conversation. Marketing reports were brutal, TikTok ads bleeding money with little to show, Facebook campaigns barely holding ground, and whispers from the sales team about longtime clients being courted away by hungrier competitors. Recruitment remained a nightmare. The HR manager brought him numbers that felt like an accusation. We've lost 10 skilled workers this month alone. They needed to stop the bleeding. But how do you stop people from leaving when others are offering double the pay and cushy benefits? He made the call. Loyalty bonuses for those who stayed, wage increases for long-term employees, and a new policy to recognize staff anniversaries publicly. It wasn't just about money. It was about making them feel anchored to something worth staying for. Meanwhile, nature added its own blows. Weeks of rain had turned construction sites into swamps, delaying deliveries and racking up penalties. Rivals pounced on the delays, offering clients guaranteed timelines with shiny brochures filled with AI-generated house designs. That was when he made the second bold decision to introduce their own turnkey house program. If the market wanted convenience, he'd give it to them, but better, cleaner, and backed by their unshakable reputation. A team was tasked with generating new designs weekly, AI assisted, but reviewed by human experts to ensure quality. It was risky. If it failed, it would look like a desperate imitation. If it worked, it could reclaim their footing in one swift strike. Through all this, she continued her quiet routines, selling dried bamboo shoots at the market, visiting small shops, cooking meals in their modest kitchen. But there was a change in her too. She began spending late nights at the small desk in their living room, flipping through borrowed business books, scribbling notes in the margins. She thought he didn't notice, but he saw everything. The fatigue in her eyes, the determination in her posture. His mother's suggestion that she become the family company's secretary had planted a seed, and now she was preparing in silence, determined not to be a burden when she finally stepped into his world. One evening, she returned from the market to find him sitting at the table, his laptop open, but untouched. A strange stillness in his posture. He looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. "We might have to move faster than we planned," he said. "Things are shifting." She didn't understand the details. He rarely burdened her with the full weight of business, but she could feel the urgency in his voice. He reached across the table, taking her hand, and she realized then that his decisions weren't just about the company's survival. They were about protecting the life they were building together. And yet, even in the midst of these storms, there were moments of disarming tenderness. His mother visited often, bringing homemade dishes, fussing over her health, offering advice disguised as casual conversation. At one lunch, the older woman mentioned the secretary position again, this time more firmly. "You belong in this family's future," she said, her gaze sharp and deliberate. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of expectation. She felt the weight of it, equal parts honor and pressure. Then came the night that would mark the turning point. She had invited him and his mother out to dinner as a thank you. Determined to contribute in her own way, she had been saving for weeks, setting aside small amounts from her market sales. What she didn't know was that he had been quietly watching her plan this, and in the final moment, he intercepted the bill, paying it before she could reach for her purse. She argued softly at first, then with quiet frustration, but he only smiled and said, "You've already given me more than money ever could." She didn't realize that in that moment, his mind was already racing ahead, planning moves, calculating risks, and bracing for the battle still to come. Because he knew something she didn't, that the competition wasn't just coming for his market share. They were coming for him, for the name he had built, for the trust he had earned. And they would tear apart everything he loved if it meant they could stand where he stood. And if that war reached their doorstep, she wouldn't be a bystander. She would be right in the center of it. It began subtly, the way most earthquakes do. Tiny, imperceptible tremors beneath the surface. Shifts so small that anyone without a trained sense for danger might mistake them for nothing at all. But he felt them. Every phone call from an old client suddenly interested in reviewing contracts. Every hesitant pause from suppliers who used to greet him like family. Every sideways glance from managers who, though loyal, were beginning to wonder if the ship they served was still seaworthy. And in the middle of this mounting quiet chaos sat her, Diep, bright-eyed in the glow of his mother's dining room, the delicate silver chain around her neck catching the light as she laughed at some story his mother told about his clumsy childhood. For a moment, watching her laugh, he almost forgot the tightening noose of competition, debt, and doubt. Almost. His mother's voice broke through the haze. "You still haven't given me an answer," she said, her eyes fixed on Diep. The room felt smaller. About the secretary position. It was presented casually, but there was an edge to it, a firmness that made it clear she wasn't just making polite conversation. Diep hesitated, her smile faltering. She murmured something about not being ready, about wanting to study more before stepping into such a role. His mother's gaze softened only slightly. "Study all you want, but opportunity doesn't wait for anyone, and neither will this family's future." It was meant as encouragement, but he caught the flicker of pressure in Diep's eyes. He knew that flicker. He'd felt it himself when his father first handed him the keys to the business, long before he was ready. He placed his hand over hers beneath the table, a silent promise that she wouldn't be forced into anything before she was ready. But the truth was, readiness had nothing to do with what was coming. The weeks that followed were a lesson in balancing masks. By day, he fought to stabilize the company, negotiating with vendors, signing short-term contracts just to keep supply chains alive, instructing marketing to double their efforts on Facebook campaigns targeting older, more reliable customers. By night, he returned to her world, the market stalls, the home-cooked meals, the laughter that tried, sometimes successfully, to drown out the noise of looming disaster. But the cracks were showing. She noticed the way his phone calls went longer, the way he sat in the car outside the house for minutes after coming home, staring at messages he wouldn't share. She asked him once, point blank, Is it about the company? He lied, not out of malice, but because the truth felt like poison. Something that, if spoken aloud, would infect their fragile peace. Then came the first real blow. A longtime client, a construction magnate who had been with the company since his father's days, suddenly pulled a major contract. The official reason was delays and logistical concerns. But he knew better. Competitors had been circling for months, whispering promises of faster timelines, newer designs, cheaper deals. He clenched his jaw and accepted the loss in public. But in private, he slammed his office door so hard, the glass rattled. That night, over dinner, Diep noticed the faint bruise on his knuckles. "You hurt yourself," she said. He shook his head, brushing it off. She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Instead, she served him another helping of soup, her way of saying she knew something was wrong, but wouldn't force him to speak before he was ready. His mother, however, wasn't so gentle. "You've been distracted," she said during her next visit. "If you want to protect what's yours, you'll need to bring people you can trust closer to you. Family." She didn't need to say the rest. He knew she meant Diep, and though he wanted nothing more than to have her by his side in the boardroom, he also knew that once she stepped into that arena, she would see the uglier sides of his world. The betrayals, the backroom deals, the ruthless decisions that left no one completely clean. But fate rarely waits for permission. One Friday afternoon, while he was in a tense budget meeting, Diep showed up at the company unannounced. She'd brought lunch, homemade, still warm in its containers, and wandered into the break room where a few employees were whispering. They stopped when they saw her, their faces a mix of surprise and discomfort. She didn't realize it, but in that moment, she'd stepped directly onto the fault line. One of the employees, flustered, let slip a fragment of a conversation about the competition buying up small suppliers and rumors about layoffs. She said nothing then, but when he came home that night, she asked again, her voice quiet but steady. "Is there something you're not telling me?" He froze. In that stillness, the weight of the truth pressed against him like a storm cloud ready to burst. He could lie again, protect her from the stress, keep her in the warm, safe space they'd built together. Or he could tell her, and in doing so, pull her into the very storm he'd been trying to shield her from. And for the first time since this war began, he didn't know which choice was the right one, because the ground beneath them was already shaking, and the real quake hadn't even hit yet.